Hey, Darwin here. The video about to watch is a complete mess. It's not even in the right aspect ratio right now because it's flipped and it's just nonsense. It's just something I really want to talk about. It's very much from my personal experience. It's very much from a Christian perspective. So if you're not really interested in that, you are a-okay to skip this. But if you're a believer or maybe just interested in hearing from a believer's perspective about cultural issues, about Harry Potter, about the thoughts of someone who grew up not being allowed to watch or read Harry Potter, and what I think after breaking the taboo and doing so. Go ahead and watch. I hope you enjoy and get something out of it. Have fun. I'm a conservative Christian. I've not made that fact very hidden. And one of the things that's really influenced me, of course, and that is my upbringing, my parents, who are both conservative Christians as well. I'm definitely not the type of person who sits and just takes whatever my parents say and believes it without thought, but I really think that they went a long way into showing me the values of this sort of lifestyle. I had a very safe upbringing in my family. I feel like a lot of people were forced to deal with things that I wasn't at an age when they weren't able to handle it. And my parents were very conscientious about what I was able to handle and at what age they were willing to present certain ideas to me. And I really appreciate that. They made a point to never lie to me, but they were very careful about what sorts of things in the world they revealed to me and at what time frame they did that. They made a point that I saw different points of view. They didn't seek to simply say, this is it and there's no other ideas that you should ever consider, but they made a real point to go forward and say, we believe this, others believe this, here's why we think this is right. And then let me think about those things for myself, which, for all my flaws, I believe is one of the best qualities I have is the thought process to kind of be able to at least accept that there are other points of view and think them through. I feel like that's helped me avoid a lot of pitfalls that others might have. One of the few mistakes I believe they made in my upbringing, though, was the banning of certain media. Like I said, they were very careful about avoiding certain topics till they thought I was at the right age, which is all fine and good, but there were a couple things that I believe they incorrectly banned, almost permanently. And those two are Pokemon and Harry Potter. Now, Pokemon is really a story for another day. There's a little bit more to that story. But I want to focus on Harry Potter, which is something that my family never, and to this day holds as something immoral inherently. A sentiment I find often repeated amongst sort of the circles I travel in a lot, the religious conservative right. And it's something I think is worth addressing, because I really feel that this is one of the biggest missteps of not only my personal upbringing, but also in the circles I travel in as well. This cultural place of the religious right seems to have really made a giant misstep with Harry Potter, and I think that's worth discussing, so I want to talk about that for a minute. So, what I want to talk about is, I guess I should say my central thesis to this entire video, is the idea that the story presented in the Harry Potter books is deeply moral, actually, and that's a fact that's really been missed by the religious right. When you look at these stories, you see important values about friendship, about the willingness to submit to correct authority, but to reject incorrect authority. There's a real, actual set of values that I feel everyone in my circle of, again, the religious right, would really venerate and value. The idea about the sanctity of the individual, about a mistrust of authoritarian governments, of not being willing to just take evil sitting down, about the importance of how one person or even a group of individuals can make a big difference against evil people who are trying to misuse systems of authority. I feel that's something that a lot of people that I talk with could really value. In terms of not just political ideology, but also even religious, there's again, most of my people are Protestant. The sanctity of the individual is so important, about the willingness of one person and what they believe truly, or not what they believe, what they know is right, and not being willing to compromise that to sate the status quo. How willing are you to balance keeping the peace with doing what you know is right? How far are you willing to let evil encroach for the sake of some semblance of peace? All of these ideas are present in Harry Potter, and so many more, that as I was reading this book, I was just confounded. Something that I had been told, and I was pretty skeptical at this point, that was a corrupting influence, seemed to be one of the best tools for teaching moral lessons to children. I'm not saying these books are perfect or anything, and I'm not even saying they're maybe as intentionally deep as I'm willing to make them, but I still think in one form or another all of these elements are there. That these are stories that teach good values to children on a core level. I'm not saying they're the deepest, most thought out, coherent set of, theological values, but I'm saying that children would only benefit, I truly believe, by reading these. This would instill the sort of truths that children need to know, without coming down as ham-fisted or preachy or brainwashy, I guess I should say. This is really a good abstract way to show the truth of life through fiction, which is how I think we often best learn, whether we agree with that or not. But despite all this, it was completely threw aside. It was treated as evil my entire life. It was simply treated as something actually insidious, a corrupting element. And I always wondered why that was. So I ended up reading these recently and watching the films, and my dad watched the first one with us, and he'd always been staunchly against Harry Potter. And he absolutely said that it was evil, that it was glorifying evil, even after watching it, which really surprised me, because I had always thought that the reason would have just been ignorance, that they just didn't know what it was about. They heard wizard and just assumed it was evil. You keep in mind that when all this is starting, this is why Pokemon is a separate story, there's a lot of misinformation, and there's not the internet to go back and check on it. Someone tells you the Emperor's New Groove is all about witchcraft. That was one that got passed around, I remember that. And so I wasn't allowed to watch that for a bit, but eventually we found out, oh, that's not true at all. It's a great movie, and they went through. I had assumed the same thing about Harry Potter. And once they actually saw what it was about, when they dug in for themselves, they would find that it was not this horrible, insidious influence that they had been led to believe. So my dad is actually deaf in one ear and decided to start watching a movie, and it is so blaringly loud that even from a floor up and across the room, you can hear it in all of the shots. So we're just gonna go from here, because I'm done caring, and we're just gonna put this up even if it's not great, but we're gonna finish it at this point. I'm committed. We're gonna see this through, and you're just gonna have to suffer along with me, because life is pain, Highness. So anyway, after watching the film, my dad said it was still corrupting, that it still sat wrong with him. It was glorifying evil. And I was like, how did you come to this conclusion? We watched the same movie. He's like, yep, I think it's making evil things seem good. It's taking witchcraft and trying to make it appealing to the youth. And I felt he'd completely missed the plot. So I started digging into this with some conversations with him, because I really wanted to figure out where he was coming from with this. And honestly, I probably should have had him. It'd be really interesting to have him on here as a sort of, like a back and forth to hear his opinion, but I'm not sure how well that would go. I'm not sure he'd be up for that kind of nonsense, but it'd be interesting. I might do that sometime. There might be a follow-up video. No, there won't. No one's gonna watch this. This is gonna tank my channel, but we're gonna finish this anyway. And so I started asking him, I was like, all right, if instead of wands, they were using lightsabers, and instead of, wizardry, it was the Force or mutant powers, would you have been okay with it? He's like, absolutely. I'm like, you change no other details about the plot, the moral, the overarching, the characters, just change the window dressing, what you call the mechanics of the world, and you'd be okay with it. Even change nothing about how they work. They still have to say words and wave it around, but if it's a lightsaber and you call it mutant powers, You still speak Latin, it works. He's like, yep, absolutely fine, because you're not glorifying evil. And that really boggled my mind, just thinking this way. Because my brain does not work like that at all. My brain does not operate kind of on that. My thought is, what is the heart of this? What is the core of this? Window dressing aside, what is the point of the story? What is it trying to convey? What is the message? What is the heart of it? But for my dad, it was all about just what it was called. So I began to wonder. I've always asked these questions, and I can't get a coherent answer out of my mom either, who's had these conversations with me, or what I feel is a coherent answer. That's not fair. So I've asked her, I let the conversation at that point drop with my dad, but I've asked her, if Harry Potter is evil, if it's immoral by the window dressing it is, even though the moral of the story seems very good and something that would be appreciated, why is Greek story, why is Greek mythology okay? Because that's not even fiction. I mean, it is fiction, but that's treated as an actual religion at one point. That's actual paganism. Why is that okay? And beyond that, why are stories like Cinderella with a fairy godmother, which is another form of just paganism, why is that okay? Aladdin. Why are things like A Christmas Carol even okay, which we hold up, as basically Christian literature, more or less, but it's got ghosts in it, which is a distinctly non-Christian idea. We, as Christians, you don't believe that after death you continue to haunt Earth. You either, go to some sort of resting place or heaven or hell, but definitely not ghosts wandering the Earth. That's pretty solidly not in line with Christian theology, yet all these things are okay. And the best answer I've gotten from her is, well, those probably aren't okay either, but you just can't win them all. And I'm gonna die on the Harry Potter hill, but not the Harry Hot. Did I say that backwards? I'm gonna die on the Harry Potter hill. Try saying that 3 times fast. But I'm not gonna die on the Christmas Carol hill or the Aladdin hill or what have you. And I found that very concerning. And the conclusion I came to is a little bit unfair, I personally think. I wish I could have them on to kind of defend themselves, or I'd rather have someone on here who feels they can talk about this issue and maybe try and put some sort of laid out argument for the other position. But the best conclusion I've been able to come to is that it's basically just a form of superstition. I don't think it's much different than being afraid of black cats and broken mirrors. Instead of looking at the heart of the issue, they're choosing to get hung up on the window dressing, I feel. Instead of looking at the story and seeing if it matches the godly values that they value, they're afraid of the word witch. They feel it has some sort of power just by being what it is. I really struggle to get past what seems to me like a great level of cognitive dissonance from their position. When they're perfectly okay and venerate things like Narnia, which I think is wonderful, which directly and intentionally pulls from pagan mythologies. They're dryads and naiads, and gods are literally mentioned. In this case, not supposed to be the god, capital G, but lowercase, kind of demigods, more like Greek mythology. But all of that is very clearly and explicitly outlined in Narnia, and that's okay because the author is a Christian. But I'm confused because I thought the entire point was that the moral doesn't matter, it's the window dressing. And the window dressing of Narnia has decidedly pagan tones. I don't know how you get past that. I don't know how you hold those two views simultaneously. I don't know how you're okay with, the Lord of the Rings, which creates its own mythology, with wizards explicitly in it. And that's okay, because the morals are good. But then when you get to Harry Potter and those same morals are, again, decidedly good, the window dressing in that case is too much. That's where it crosses the line. I can't understand what the worldview behind that is, and what the conclusion I've come to is that this is just a modern form of superstition. We're scared of things that we were told were wrong inherently, that it's never okay to use these things, and we've been holding two ideas in our head, that Narnia is a great story written by a Christian author, and that makes it a wonderful book with good morals for children, and even if it uses some imagery that isn't explicitly Christian, it's just telling a fantasy story using this window dressing to make a point. And that Harry Potter, despite it being an inherently moral story that would be good for children, the window dressing makes it evil. I don't think those two can be held simultaneously. I think if you stop and think about it, you either have to condemn Narnia and Lord of the Rings as disturbing, disruptive witchcraft that glorifies evil, or you have to accept that Harry Potter is a moral story that is good, for children to read, to learn about the truth of good versus evil, and about all those things I mentioned beforehand. And that's a bit of a harsh indictment of people that I love desperately, but I think it's something that we really need to consider, we being conservative Christians, the people that are in my circles. I think that's something you really need to step back and evaluate. I'd love to hear an answer from you, that how you can reconcile something like Narnia being not glorifying evil and paganism and witchcraft, and yet Harry Potter being something that does. I would agree that I like Narnia better. I think it has better morals, but I don't think you can argue that the morals of Harry Potter are really insidious. I do not think that's a reasonable argument. So I'd love to hear from maybe someone who holds those positions, kind of how you reconcile these two ideas. Do you land on the idea that even Narnia or anything that it pulls from any sort of mythology is just evil by doing so? And then I've got a lot of questions about how you get through life and how you get through parables in the Bible if you can't pull from anything that's not literal, very explicit, correct theology for your fiction. Or do you land on the side that, you can use mythologies and parables to get across a moral point, and that you don't take it literally, that actual witchcraft, comes from the enemy? Any kind of supernatural force that isn't from God would come from something evil. But that's not how the rules of this story work, that there's just kind of magic inherently, and it just exists, and it's whimsical. Or are you of the opinion that Narnia, for some reason, is exception to this rule, but Harry Potter's not? For people that believe that, I would really be interested in hearing how you get past that. What am I missing? And if you don't have a great answer for that, I would love to maybe talk more about the idea of trying to get past that, what seems like cognitive dissonance to me. I think it would be great to try and talk about this and see that maybe there's a great opportunity to look at something that we had just kind of dismissed out of hand, to interact with people. Because I feel that Harry Potter isn't as popular as it once was, but I feel we really missed a chance to relate to people. There's a lot of people that really got a lot out of Harry Potter. It was a cultural phenomenon that people of all different walks of life could get to and come around and could connect about. It was a great opportunity to connect to people that think differently than you, who maybe haven't even heard your ideas, that are good ideas that could help their lives, that could, help them to find fulfillment and happiness and the truth, most importantly. And you missed that opportunity because you were scared of the word witch. You weren't willing to come around something that was really harmless and that everyone could unite around, and not use it as another form of division and fighting lines to fight about something just to fight about it. And instead of taking that opportunity to connect with people on something that we could all come together on, that wasn't deeply immoral, that wasn't compromising, that was very family friendly. Instead of taking the opportunity, it was thrown away so we could hide in enclaves. I'm a big proponent of not being of the world. I think trying to compromise your values to get along with people is wrong. I think right is right and wrong is wrong, and you need to stand firm on that. I say laying down. So, there's even some things like, some people watch Game of Thrones, that's great, but I think that crosses too many lines into being a little bit debaucherous for me to enjoy, at least. But Harry Potter was harmless. You get past the word witch and there's really nothing that reasonable people could object to. And I wish that we had taken that opportunity to connect with people instead of just turning into another dividing line to fight about. And I really see a missed opportunity that I wish we had taken to just connect with other people. I don't know. I see it as a tragedy having gone through these books and seeing the missed opportunity and all the chances I could have had, the story I would have enjoyed as a child, the chance it would have had to let me connect with my fellow students who maybe weren't Christians or didn't see kind of the way I thought about things. So this is a real call in the future. If you are kind of a very staunch, a little bit isolationist culturally Christian, I encourage you to re-examine some of the things that you've maybe dismissed out of hand and consider looking and seeing if there's something there that you can connect with people about. I'm not in any way suggesting you throw away your morals or start just indulging in evil, debaucherous things that are corrupting, but maybe be willing to take a second look at something that you dismissed out of hand and see if there's anything of value there, and see if you're dismissing something that could be a great tool for the kingdom. My name's Dolan Malna. I hope you have a great day. God bless.